All right, welcome to your deep dive, where we try to take all that fitness info out there, the sheer volume of it, and boil it down to something you can actually use, like the aha moments, the stuff that actually makes a difference. Because let's be real, who has time to wade through all the noise? And today, we're diving deep into abs.
But not just any ab workout. This is about getting specific, really specific. We're going straight to the source. Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, he laid out 3 abdominal exercises that he considers, well, essential.
Yeah.
And he did it in an article. So yeah, think of this as your shortcut to understanding his thinking.
Yeah, we're using his perspective as our main source today. And this isn't just about learning 3 new exercises, right? It's about understanding why he chose these, why they're so important to him, especially because some of them, well, they might go against what you've heard before, especially about hip flexors. We're going to talk about those. And we're also going to talk about why stability, not just flexing, could be the key to a really strong core. All right, let's get started. First up, the glute ham developer sit-up, GHD Sit-Up.
Now, if you're not familiar with a GHD, it's a piece of equipment that lets you move through a really big range of motion. With the sit-up, you start with your hips and back extended way back. Then you pull yourself all the way up until you touch the pads, which are usually above your shins and instep. So it's your whole body weight moving through this big arc.
And that's where the debate often starts, right? You might have heard from trainers, maybe aerobics instructors, that these are kind of dangerous for your lower back because of the iliopsoas, which is that big hip flexor muscle, puts a lot of stress on the lumbar spine. And they might also say, it's mostly a hip flexor exercise, not really working your abs.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, and it is true. Those hip flexors, the iliopsoas, and the rectus femoris, they're the prime movers here, lifting your torso up. You can look up diagrams of them if you're curious. But here's the thing. Glassman sees this differently. He says, calling this bad ab training, that's just like typical gym trainer talk. The real key here, it's not about just flexing your abs. It's about them resisting extension, which is way more important when you think about real-life movement.
Right. And when you consider how sore your abs can be after doing even a few of these, it's hard to argue. He says just a couple sets can make your abs really sore, so something's definitely happening there.
Right. And yeah, your hip flexors are starting the movement, but those abs are controlling it the whole time. Think about it. When you go down on the GHD, your abs got to work hard to stop your spine from hyperextending, from arching too much. Glassman actually says this stabilizing function is a more functional role for your abs than just bending forward.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about controlling the movement, right? Staying stable. And you need that for, well, pretty much everything. Sports, daily life, just moving around. And he even gives you a cue to get those abs working right away. Start by trying to curl your torso up.
Yeah, that cue gets your abs firing right from the start. Now, about that lumbar spine concern. He knows if you're prone to lower back pain, this might feel, a little funky at first. But he really stresses that if you ease into it with good form, it can actually help you retrain those hip flexors so they work more efficiently and ultimately safer. It could even decrease low back pain that comes from hip flexion. Over time, of course.
That's really interesting. So maybe it's not the exercise itself that's bad, but it's showing you where your weaknesses are and helping you fix them.
Exactly. A lot of people with lower back issues, it's because they're using their iliopsoas too much and not enough of the rectus femoris. Think about it. The iliopsoas attaches to both your pelvis and lumbar spine. So when it's working overtime, it can tug on your spine. The rectus femoris, though, that only attaches to your pelvis. So when you flex your hip using that more, it's pulling from a stable base, less spinal stress.
All right, so how do you teach someone to use that rectus femoris more during the GHD sit-up?
Simple cue. Tell them to try to extend their legs, even though they're already straight, and push into the pad as they sit up. Most people at first are like, wait, I am doing that. But when they finally make the connection, in their brain and muscles, it's like this aha moment. You can see the difference too. The movement becomes smoother, controlled. It's coming from the pelvis, not the spine pulling up.
So it's retraining your body to move better, safer. And if you practice, right, maybe slowly increase your range of motion, those of you who feel some discomfort at first, that could go away. Or you just get stronger.
Right. It's about building those connections, the strength in the right places. And the GHD sit-up, it's not just an exercise on its own. It's like a foundation. Glassman calls it a gateway exercise. It prepares you for harder things, like the medicine ball throw sit-up. He even says there was an Olympic javelin thrower who thought that was the toughest ab exercise ever. So, this kind of training can build some serious power.
Wow. And yet, as he says, the GHD sit-up is often ignored, even looked down on. So maybe we're really underestimating those hip flexors. When they're used right, they can contribute a lot to, well, athletic performance. It's fascinating how connected everything is. Let's move on now to something that looks kind of simple, but done right, it's anything but the hollow rock.
Ah, the hollow rock. It can look almost easy, right? Lying there, rocking back and forth. But if you're doing it right, it's really challenging. So real quick, how to do it. You lie on your back, arms overhead, legs straight. Then you lift your arms and legs a bit, just a bit, and you want to keep this like banana shape with your body. And you rock back and forth, nice and smooth, like a rocking chair.
Okay, so far so good. Where does it get hard?
The hard part is keeping that lower back completely rounded. You have to use your abs to pull that lower back, that curve you naturally have, completely off the floor. Your whole back, shoulders to glutes, should be rounded, touching the ground. If you can't do that, if there's a flat spot in your lower back hitting the floor, your rocking is going to be jerky. That means weakness. You're not engaging those lower abs properly.
So even though it looks like a full body exercise, it's really targeting a specific part of your core.
Right. The hip flexors are working a little, but not much. The real stars of the show here. Lower fibers of your rectus abdominis. The lower abs everyone talks about. They're hard to target, though. And there's even research now saying those obliques, the muscles on the sides of your abs, they also help with that lumbar flexion, which is key to keeping that rounded back.
And that clunking sound you hear sometimes, that's the lack of engagement.
Exactly. If your lower back is hitting the floor as you rock, that clunk, that's because you're not flexing your lumbar spine enough. The lower abs aren't pulling it off the ground.
It's kind of funny, right? You see people doing tons of crunches, thinking they're working their abs, but then they struggle with this. Glassman uses this example of like aerobics instructors with a lower abdominal pooch. They can do hundreds of crunches, but they still don't have that deep lower ab engagement that the hollow rock needs.
Yeah, that image sticks with you. His point is that really working those lower abs, it takes focus, mental focus, and effort over time. The hollow rock, it's both a test of your lower ab strength and a way to build it.
So for people who can't even feel their lower abs working, what should they do?
There's a good drill for that. Stand against the wall, back, heels, back of your head, all touching. Press your shoulders into the wall. Now slowly roll that contact point down your back. Shoulders, mid-back, lower back, until your butt is against the wall. You'll probably find it hard to keep your lower back touching. That's because you need to tilt your pelvis and contract those lower abs to flatten your back against the wall.
I bet that's a lot harder than it sounds.
Oh, it is. To really test those lower abs, try this. Roll up a magazine, put it in your lower back against the wall while keeping that flat back. Have someone try to pull it out. If you're engaging right, you'll feel this pulling above your pubic bone. That's what you want.
That's a good way to feel what those muscles should be doing. So for the hollow rock itself, even if it feels impossible at first, the advice is just keep practicing, right? Focus on that rounded back.
Exactly. Just trying to rock for like 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't use your arms and legs too much. The goal is that smooth movement from your core, from that rounded lower back.
What does a perfect hollow rock look like then?
When you've got it, your body is basically flat. Hands and feet are low. The rocking is tiny, almost invisible. And your lower back never leaves the ground. No flat spot. If you could do that for 2 minutes straight, you've got strong abs. All right, we've gone from a sit-up that's all about those hip flexors to a rock that's pure core strength. Now let's talk about an exercise that is strength and control.
The L-sit.
Yeah, the L-sit. You support your entire body weight with just your arms, legs straight out in front. So your body makes an L shape. And it's not about reps, it's about how long you can hold that position perfectly.
And Glassman says this might be the most functional ab exercise. That's a big claim. Why does he think that?
It's about understanding what your abs are really for. It's not just about bending forward like in a crunch. Their main job is stabilizing your torso, keeping it rigid. Bending is important, sure, but stability, you need that for everything. Lifting things, sports, just moving through life. And in the L-sit, your straight legs create this force, this torque at your hips. Your abs have to fight against that to keep your legs up and your spine from, collapsing.
So it's about stopping movement, not creating it.
Right. And as for building core strength, he thinks the L-sit might be the best there is. It's not just about stability, it's also that people who can hold it for 3 minutes. Other ab exercises become easy. He even talks about gymnasts. They have amazing hip and trunk strength, and he thinks it's because of L-sits and similar holds.
That 3 minutes is a benchmark then, and he mentions that person with the lower ab pooch again. They can never hold an L-sit. And they tend to have weak hip flexors too.
Yeah, he has this test for hip flexor strength. Have someone stand on one leg, raise the other knee to hip height, then push down on that knee. People with the pooch, they're usually pretty weak there. You push their knee down easily, but someone who's trained the L-sit, they're way stronger. You're more likely to knock them over than push their knee down.
So being able to do an L-sit shows real core and hip strength in a way that crunches just don't.
Right. He's very clear. If you can hold a 3-minute L-sit, you won't have that pooch. But you see people doing tons of crunches, and they still do.
What about people who can't even get into the L-sit position?
Just keep trying. He suggests a couple things. Hang from a pull-up bar, try to raise your straight legs as high as you can, or practice the L-sit with one leg at a time. Build up to it.
Where's the best place to do them?
Parallel bars are good. Parallettes, which are like mini parallel bars, are good too. Even the floor works. But he says the floor is hardest because there's no space under you. So if your legs sag even a little, it's much harder. Parallettes are good for beginners because you have that space, so your legs don't have to be perfectly straight. But for real measurement, for testing, the floor is the standard.
How do you track progress?
He says every 15 seconds you hold the L-sit, give yourself a point. The goal is 12 points, which is 3 minutes, and about 6 months of training. Do it a few times a week, maybe in your warm-up or cool-down.
So we've looked at these 3 exercises that Glassman sees as foundational for ab training. And a big part of his view is understanding those abs differently and the importance of those hip flexors, which might surprise some people.
Yeah, that brings us to his thoughts on the relationship between abs and hip flexors. He says there's a lot of, misinformation out there, myths, confusion, even some straight-up BS. And he thinks a lot of it comes from not understanding how important those hip flexors are for movement, especially in athletics, and how they work with the abs.
What are the consequences of that, in his opinion?
He says it leads a lot of trainers to avoid or even tell people not to do exercises that use the hip flexors. And that's a big reason why the crunch is so popular now. He even talks about how many more Google search results you get for crunch compared to sit-up. It shows the trend.
And he gets that the crunch is a good exercise, but he doesn't think it's inherently safer or better than the sit-up.
Yeah. He uses this example of the Navy SEALs. They switched from sit-ups to crunches. And at first, their running times got better. But then they realized it was partly because the crunches were weakening their hip flexors. They had switched because of worries about sit-ups and back injuries.
He also mentions Dr. Fred Cook, who invented the ab mat, which is used to modify the sit-up.
Yeah, the ab mat was made to make the sit-up safer. And Glassman thinks it's an improvement over the old, flat back sit-up. But he still thinks it might be missing the bigger picture, the importance of those hip flexors.
He even has a different idea about why the Navy might have had problems with the sit-up.
He thinks it might not have been just the hip flexors. Maybe it was also because the old sit-ups were, too explosive, and they weren't training the other side enough, the hip extensors.
So what's the overall CrossFit view on this?
They think the Navy was right to move away from the old sit-up and use something like the ab mat sit-up. But they still think those hip flexors are crucial for athletic performance. And you need to train both sides, abs and hip extensors. So squats and deadlifts are important too. They believe that if you train this way, you'll see results in just a few months.
So as we wrap up, what are the main things to take away from this?
The GHD sit-up, it's not as scary as some people think. It can build serious ab strength and teach you to use your hip flexors better. The hollow rock is great for both testing and building those deep lower ab muscles. And the L-sit, it's all about stability, and it's a good sign of overall core and hip strength. These 3 exercises, when you do them right, they challenge a lot of the common wisdom about abs, and they show how important those hip flexors are.
So here's something to think about. What if you start using these exercises? Really focus on doing them right and understand how those muscles work together. Could that change how you train your core? Could it make you stronger and more functional? It's definitely worth experimenting with. See what happens. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.